Hello and welcome to the World Pipelines podcast, a podcast series for pipeliners, featuring short, insightful interviews with people in the oil and gas pipeline industry. I'm your host, Elizabeth Corner, and in this season of the podcast, we are talking to membership associations for the pipeline sector. We learn about how membership organizations benefit the pipeline sector and those who work in it, discussing events, networking, resources, training, skills development and learning. We'll discuss the human factor in all things pipelines and seek to understand the unique ways in which organizations foster connection. We'll also look to the future of the industry and think about career tracks, hiring, and career longevity.
The World Pipelines podcast is brought to you by TD Williamson. Looking for the safest inline isolation solution on the market? Look no further. The Smart Plug inline isolation system from TD Williamson delivers with double independent energized seals, giving you unmatched protection on every project. From maintenance to emergency repairs, the Smart Plug offers the safety and reliability that pipeline operators depend on. Ready to upgrade your next project? Visit tdw.red/smartplug to learn more.
So here we bring you episode 1, in which I am very pleased to welcome Kevin O'Donnell, who is Executive Director at PLCAC and was Chief Financial Officer at Bannister Pipelines until August 2022. So hello and welcome to the podcast, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth, and it's a pleasure to be a part of this important dialogue. Just from your introduction, I think we're going to have a very good conversation.
I think so too. Very pleased to have you here on episode 1. So in this season of the podcast, we're looking to find out what makes each of the featured pipeline organizations unique. So perhaps you can start us off by describing the PLCAC and what its primary aims are.
Terrific. Thank you. So I guess I got to start off by saying we consider ourselves certified platinum now. We just finished our 70th year and celebrated our 70-year anniversary of institution.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It was very, very good. And I think it was a very rewarding event we had back in May. So very proud of that growth. So, your question on the primary goals, we are in business to professionally serve our members, our union partners, and it's very important to underscore the word partners because they truly are our partners. Our owner clients, obviously they are the capital behind our industry. Mm-hmm. And, really we want to be a multi-element leader in the Canadian energy sector.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Can you just run us through what exactly the PLCAC stands for anybody who's not au fait with the acronym?
Sure, certainly. It's a mouthful. So it's the Pipeline Contractors Association of Canada. We'd be a sister organization to the Pipeline Contractors Association, which is based in Washington and serves the United States of America. So, I mentioned we are 70 years young. We are platinum certified, and it began with about 30 members. And today we have over 160 members, and we have an extremely strong fabric. It really allows us to be effective in many aspects of the energy industry. And the original impetus to starting the association was to negotiate union contracts.
Mm-hmm.
The natural evolution now is that we're very active in many elements of our industry. A big key for us is to advance, our Indigenous relations and reconciliation, continuous improvement in our safety measures, mm-hmm. and government advocacy, which I'm sure we'll talk more about because that's very important to us. So that's how we've evolved over the 70 years.
Fantastic. That's great. That gives us a nice bit of background. Every organization has something that sets it apart. What would you say, Kevin, is PLCAC's unique selling point, especially for that Canadian pipeline industry?
Very good question. I have to say it truly is the community. It's the community that's been built. Mm-hmm. So we have our regular members who are the constructors. We have our associate members who are the suppliers. And a lot of our innovation and ingenuity comes out of our associate members. We have our honorary members. And then, of course, we have our stakeholders, which are the unions, client owners, and governments at all levels. Our members really have a long and trusted history with each other. And we really seem to coalesce around challenges and threats. And as you can imagine, being in Canada, a cold weather nation, vast terrain, widely dispersed population, we have our challenges. But as a group, we come together, we overcome them, and we actually learn and advance through them.
I wonder why you think that you so naturally kind of come together on those challenges.
Without one another, we're nothing. We really are a team in this. And I mentioned the different stakeholders, but the primary team is the PLCAC, which is the constructor side, and our unions. Our union partners, our four crafts, are integral to us building pipelines safely and efficiently. And we have open dialogue. We always work together. We're not always going to agree. We know that, but we are going to agree that we have a problem in front of us and we're going to work to solve it.
Yeah, so that common goal is the thing that brings you together.
That's correct, yes.
And how do you define success for the PLCAC? I wonder what kind of metrics or achievements do you consider when you're assessing the usefulness or the impact of the work that you do?
Oh, that's a very good question too. And, we can always jump in with, the stock answers, but the true element that we look at here, and I go back to the fabric, the first one's got to be safety. We've seen the evolution of safety. We've seen how effective our training has been with our partners in the unions, and safety programs, not just the statistics, but actually the uptake in the programs. And we have many of them. We refine them. We constantly challenge ourselves on them. And we always aim for a goal of zero. And without that goal in mind, it's tough to know how you're actually really doing. So that's really the first measure. The other thing we really have to look at is our labor agreements. In Canada, especially with the PLCAC, even compared to other sectors, we have a unique relationship with our four crafts. We have a no strike, no lockout agreement. Our terms are long in nature, conventionally, normally 5 years. And we've had uninterrupted labor supply for approximately 70 years. And the other one that's very germane to Canada and also in other parts of the world is the Indigenous sustainability. So we have, approximately 5% of our Canadian population would identify as Indigenous. And our goal is to always include 10% in our hires and training, as well as supply chain, joint ventures, and community efforts. So those are really what we measure ourselves against. Market share is standard. It's arithmetic. Anyone can do that. But without the other three, market share doesn't matter.
Really important priorities there. Now, PLCAC is known for organising various events throughout the calendar year. Can you highlight for us some of the key events or initiatives that you believe have the most impact on the pipeline industry?
Okay, that's a good one and should be an easy one for me. New to the seat, 2.5 years. I've always known that our convention is ranked among our peers in the States, the UK, and Euro as one of the best conventions. And let's admit, it's fun. There's always going to be an element of fun when you're networking. But we've really amped up our focus on other elements that I mentioned earlier. And, they come a little bit outside the strict confines of just labor negotiations. But I can give you a good example. In May, when we celebrated our 70th, we included, keynote speakers and working sessions that really impacted our members. And I think it's going to impact our association, but also our nation. We had our former Prime Minister Harper speak, who's a big advocate for policy reform and for pipeline efficiency. We had senior vice presidents from our major clients come and address and speak with our members about the future, speak about the challenges and headwinds and how we can meet them together. And lastly, we had a very important element I talked about is safety, but the extension of safety is mental health. When we think about our workers are often away from home, family and friends for months at a time. And there's added stress that, other people wouldn't find in the workplace. And we had an inspirational speaker come, very well received, very open to dialogue, and has maintained a relationship with several of our members since then and has spoken to their companies just about mental health resilience. And, we're in this together, and there are avenues to resolve the challenges that you can feel, especially when you're away from friends and family for extended periods of time.
That is really great to hear. Obviously, we know that at these sorts of meetings, there's a networking side of things, there's a social side. But actually, like what I can hear that you're doing is taking some of those bigger issues and taking them seriously and addressing them through different means.
Yeah, indeed. And it was very well received. And of course, we do our postmortems on these events. And we had very good feedback. And it's circular.
Good.
It gives us the energy to continue doing what we've kicked off. And, next year in BAM, Alberta, we're going to do the same. And the challenge now is to do it a little bit better, but we're going to maintain the same priorities.
Of course. What kind of feedback do you get from people after your conventions?
Through the networking, you get a lot of verbal, and it's like any event, it all comes at you so fast. It's hard to digest and really, exploit what you hear. So we put it out to formal Survey Monkey, and we have your statistics for sure, but then you also ask for what did you really think about it? And the common theme that came through was the speakers and the industry content, and then of course the inspirational speakers. So that energized us to do it again. So I think we hit a high note on those.
That's great. I wonder if you can tell me what the ethos or the guiding philosophy behind the PLCAC is. And then how does that ethos influence the way that the organization operates and interacts with its members?
Another good question. So we are funded and driven by our members. And for over 70 years, that's feedback enough that we're doing things mostly right and we can always look to improve. Mm-hmm. I think we deliver a product and a service that allows our members, all categories, to really grow and succeed in their business despite the challenges and headwinds in our industry. We really aim to be at the forefront of advancements in the industry. We're constantly monitoring the industry for the challenges, the headwinds, the future. And we work closely with our suppliers. If it's, regarding obviously environmental, safety, and just efficiency. So we do make our visits to their training centers. We make our visits to their AI centers, which is really cool to see what's happening with big machineries and small machineries alike. Mm-hmm. And overall, it's the balanced approach to our true stakeholders. And I'll call them our shareholders. We've got our shareholders who fund us, and we have our stakeholders are the people who we serve. And that boils right down to, the Canadian population.
And I wonder if I could ask what makes you a brilliant executive director? What resonates what about the ethos resonates with you as a person when you look back on your career?
Well, I guess it has to be, I've had full scope of the industry. I've had full scope from the field. I've had full scope from the client relations, the union negotiations, and working with Indigenous bands across Canada. So with those elements, by coincidence, happen to be four of the most important pillars that we have to balance. I think I have ground level knowledge and then advanced level wisdom on most of them, and not all of them. But I've also found it important to know who to call when you don't know. So I think the Rolodex is important.
Absolutely. As you've touched upon, the pipeline industry in Canada does face quite a unique set of challenges. I wonder what you see as the most pressing issues that are facing the Canadian industry today, and maybe tell me how PLCAC is addressing those challenges.
Well, I will tell you directly and indirectly. I'm speaking with my colleagues in the UK and in the US and in Australia. Canada is not alone with one of these challenges, and that challenge really is, I won't go into the details of it, but the government framework that permits pipelines and extraction of resources and infrastructure, it's fractured. I won't say it's broken, but it is fractured. In the last decade, it's been a reactionary process, and that really started with the advance of ESG, became very well recognized, but not rationalized. And I can tell you as an association, a representative of our members, we have very, very strong ESG commitments, but we now need rationalization, and we need a system around them that permits the balance of really harvesting your country assets while balancing your ESG. One cannot supersede the other. The two have to work in harmony. Without that, you have uncertainty. And with that uncertainty, we've seen it in the last 10 years where a lot of countries' assets become stranded, and capital will not chase uncertainty. They'll chase certainty. And we saw that. We're moving towards a position where we are helping influence policy. We're helping to learn from our mistakes, helping to help governments learn from their mistakes and make sure that we have a new and efficient process. That's what we're really doing as an association right now.
I'm very happy to hear that. Moving on, how would you say that the PLCAC leverages data at its decision-making process? Maybe you can provide me an example where data from your membership has played a crucial role in shaping an initiative or a policy.
Sure. Well, let's face it. Data is the new data, so you can't live without it. I would say the first one that would come to mind, and this comes from my time as a CFO as well, is your safety statistics. There is so much data to be mined when you do coalesce all of the data from all of your members, and you can see trends and you can see needs and you can see and probably help forecast where the threats and challenges are. And we certainly do work with our members to make sure that the data is available, even if it's pinpointing down to a time of day or a day of week, a day in the pay cycle when accidents are most or more prone to happen. Those would be, what we would call lagging indicators. We would know that, based on X number of hours and X number of workers and X number of days, when there's a probability or possibility of incidents to occur. The other data we have to look at is the leading indicators. So really the frequency of your safety meeting, safety training, hours of training per employee. Those are the leading indicators that are going to help predict the future. One other area of data collection we use, and it's smaller, but it's very important because it affects our future of our workforce. We do offer scholarships and we do have a large population that applies for it. And we use a third party to stratify the data to make sure that the most qualified people are receiving those scholarships, but also communicating to the populace as well that, hey, here, these are the indicators and this is the data we'll be looking at. Make sure for next year that you adjust your profile and you hit each one of those, quantums along the way.
I'm glad you're talking about people now because that is my next question. So the people behind the PLCAC, tell me who makes up the organization's core demographic, and then how do you ensure that the needs of that group of people are met?
Okay, great question. And I'll probably start with a little bit of a preamble, but I think it's important to recognize that each of our stakeholders or groups are made up of different groups of demographics. Let's start with our staff. We have a very small and dedicated staff. We are very diverse horizontally and vertically. We can all deduce what that means, but that's been part of my goal here in building the team. Our members, it doesn't take very much time on Google Chrome to see who makes up a board of directors now. But historically, pipeliners have been a male-dominant industry, and I'll call it contained expertise. And that led to challenges in attracting more people, attracting a diverse workforce, attracting, say, underrepresented communities into the industry. And we're working on that. The opposite side to that is, you have a board of directors with over 30 years of experience in each person. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to replace that. And we're working at on-ramping and how we're doing that knowledge transfer and attracting those who would not normally feel inclined to land in a board position. And that comes through just entering the industry. And it also comes from applying for and volunteering on committees. Mm-hmm. So demographic, I mentioned, like traditional resources is aging population and predominantly male. So what are we doing with that? We're working with our union partners to make sure that anything we can do to help them attract people from underrepresented communities, meaning in the female population, there's a very big push on for that in all of the trades. We advertise in female targeted media to make sure that they understand that pipeline professionals includes them.
Right.
And in Canada, the important one is the Indigenous population. Same thing, making sure that there's training available that suits their culture, and timing, making sure they understand the timelines of what it takes to onboard and then retain and stay in the industry. And it's become generational. It's, I mentioned the 10% earlier. We'd obviously like to see more than that because we need the people. We need the people from all aspects of our communities.
Super. Now, going back to your involvement in the industry, I wonder what are some of the most significant changes that you've witnessed in the pipeline industry, and how the association might also reflect and adapt to those changes.
So, as I mentioned, it's over 30 years in the industry. So I've really seen a lot. The two things, worker safety and safety innovation. I've really seen that take the forefront. And again, when I talked about leading indicators, the time spent on training, the time spent on JSAs, the time taken, period, the time taken to do a task, that's really become part of the culture. And I'm sure it's predominant in many other industries, but I can assure you in the pipeline in Canada, that's number one. Again, I mentioned the Indigenous involvement, where now these are sustainable relationships. These are, this goes from direct hire and training to joint ventures to ownership. And of course, the third is the environmental, just the awareness, but also the protection of the environment. I just on a recent project there, any movement of water, so diversion of streams, remediation of any sort of flooding, they had to employ machinery that is new to our industry, that those machines cost over $10 million each. There's not too many pieces of equipment in pipeline that cost that amount of money. So the fact that commitment is there, I think it's an excellent thing. And I think it shows that we can be sustainable.
Fantastic. And finally then, as we look towards the future, what are your aspirations for the PLCAC? Where do you see the organization heading in the next 5 or 10 years?
Well, I can tell you it's a dynamic industry to say the least. And we go through our peaks and valleys, and we just came off of our historical peak. And with the valley that came in between, there was limited optimism, but I can tell you right now, I'm very optimistic for the future. Okay. And the common themes too, even with the safety advancements, we're very excited about that. We know as Union Crafts, we can build pipelines very safely and efficiently. But also, if you look at even today's data, the Canadian drilling rigs have increased their number by 25% in the last 2 quarters with the on-streaming of CGL or TMX. Canada is back in that seat to become an energy superpower. We now have the efficient means to get our product to market, and the world is recognizing it. So I'm very, very, very optimistic about the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for talking to me, Kevin. Oh,
my pleasure. Again, very, very excited to be part of the dialogue, and I thank you for your time in putting this together.
My thanks to Kevin O'Donnell for talking us through how the PLCAC works as an organisation, and for offering some brilliant insight into the unique issues affecting the Canadian pipeline sector. What a great start to Season 3. Thanks for listening to the World Pipelines podcast. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts. If you have enjoyed this episode, please rate and review and forward to a colleague or friend.
The World Pipelines podcast is brought to you by TD Williamson. The Smart Plug offers the safety and reliability that pipeline operators depend on. Ready to upgrade your next project? Visit tdw.red/smartplug to learn more.